Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Cheryl Selman, and welcome to The Love Code. This is a show dedicated to uplifting you, transforming you, healing you, expanding your consciousness, connecting you with your soul purpose. So it's all about allowing you to really step into who you really are and create the life that you've always wanted to create and you knew was your destiny. And I'm pleased that you're with me again because, as always, these shows truly are inspirational and life-changing. If you are listening for the very first time, I want to very much welcome you to the show. It's always a pleasure to have new listeners join in. And if you are listening for the very first time, or maybe you've listened before but didn't realize that you can get all of the archived shows either through my Facebook page, which is What Women Must Know. I post them every week after the show airs live. The archive shows are available through my Facebook page, or you can go to my website, drcherylselman.com, and I will, if you opt in there, I will then send out those archive shows right to your inbox. So either way, or, I suggest both, like me over on my Facebook page, What Women Must Know, and opt into drcherylselman.com because I post different things, information, just always trying to keep you up to date with things that I think are really relevant and will have an impact on your life. So I hope you'll join me there. And if you're wondering why my Facebook page is What Women Must Know, that is the name of the very first show I started doing here on Progressive Radio Network many, many, many moons ago. Actually, What Women Must Know was one of the first shows to be part of the PRN family. So that show's been around a long time and going strong. So that's what Women Must Know is all about, which means that it's still going strong. And if you either like my Facebook page or opt in or just happen to listen every Thursday at 4 p.m. on Progressive Radio Network, you'll get to hear my wonderful show, What Women Must Know, which again has many luminaries and focusing more on health and other aspects of improving the quality of our life and empowering us. So there you go. Both are wonderful shows, and hope you'll be visiting me there every week, or I'll be visiting you every week. So I'd like to share with you my guest today, who is a renowned numerologist. We're going to be discovering and exploring how you can discover your true purpose through spiritual numerology. Numerology is a really interesting, I guess I'd call it an investigation into a deeper nature of who you are. It's always fascinated me, the power of numerology. What is it that makes numerology such a profound tool to allow us to tap into who we are, where we're going, what's going on? So to help us discover all about spirituality is my guest today, Larry Malakoff, who has been a numerologist for over 20 years. He co-created a full line of numerology reports and software for professional and personal use, and many consider these reports to be among the best available today and have been offered by major organizations, including Association for Research and Enlightenment, Astrology.com, and Numerologist.com. More recently, Larry founded the KnowYouProfiles.com website, and that's KnowYou, K-N-O, capital U, profiles. These extremely informative, life-inspiring reports based on the science of numerology and intended for all audiences are all about you, using just the letters and numbers associated with your name and birth date. They are penetrating tools to help you better understand your true purpose in life, real strengths, and untapped potential, and can help shape your life in more positive ways than you thought possible. It's like reading a blueprint for your soul. So Larry's going to help us really delve into the science and the spiritual path through numerology today, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Larry to the show. Hello, Larry.
Well, hello, Sherilyn. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you've devoted so much of your life to this path of the spiritual path through the tool of numerology or through the science of numerology. I always like to find out, it makes me curious as to how people get started on their path and purpose in life. So tell us, Larry, how you began your journey that led you, I guess you could say, led you into the path of numerology.
Well, that's a funny story. I actually got started, I think, on the spiritual path first, and it was later on in life that actually, it goes back so far along. I'm not sure which one came first. I take that back. But I got started with numerology when I was going through actually a very difficult period of my life. I had co-founded a manufacturing company for microcomputers in my late 20s. And we were working insane hours. I was working like 100 hours a week to try to get this business to go on top of a full-time job that we had with the partners that I was working with. And sort of got burnt out physically and mentally, emotionally through the process. And I started working with an interesting psychologist. You walk into his office and he had statues of Buddha all over the place. So I said, oh, this must be the right place. He would always, I would say always, but he quite frequently asked me for my name at birth and my date of birth. And, he would just casually ask for it in the middle of wherever we were doing. And I didn't think much of it, so I just told him what the information was that he requested. And after about the third or fourth time that he asked me for that, in different visits that I had with him, I finally said, why are you asking me, what this is? Why do you keep asking for my name and date of birth? And it turned out that he said that I got a very surprising answer. It wasn't what I was expecting. He says, well, this is numerology, and I can learn a lot more about you from numerology by listening to you, just sharing your life story and, babbling along, and as a result be able to help you more. So that tweaked my interest with numerology a little bit. I still didn't know what it really was. And that was like the beginning. That was where things first began. And then what happened is I got into that business I told you about, and when I left that business, I got a job in another company, and I wanted to get back into being into business for myself again because I enjoyed working for myself rather than working for someone else. And I didn't know what to do, but I was fascinated by software as a result of this business because it was a computer business and got exposed to working with software. And from the working with the software, I said, well, what could I do that would be of interest? And my wife, I don't remember if it was my wife or myself, but somehow we made the connection with, well, let's do something with numerology. Maybe it'll be an interesting thing that we could sell. And that's what started things off. And then I started looking for partners to work with and ended up going through 3 different partners. It was the third partner that I found, Matthew Oliver Goodwin, who is a master numerologist, very well renowned, and author of some very wonderful books on numerology that I ended up working with. And together, we put together all the software that we did. Still didn't know a whole bunch about numerology at that time, but over time, working side by side with Matthew, who is a master numerologist, I learned a tremendous amount. And then I read his books that he wrote and learned even more. And that was sort of like the beginning of how I got started. So that was a long answer to a short question.
Well, usually it is a long answer as we find our life's purpose. So it's so interesting because you came into this as a programmer, not knowing much about numerology, but seeing a possibility, and then you had the good fortune or destiny or karma, whatever you want to say, of connecting with a master numerologist that you developed your program with, which is pretty extraordinary when you think about it, how life, brings us these opportunities and connections and changes the course of, our purpose here.
Very true. Very true. Those are very profound things you just said about all of us, not just me. About how we all are pushed off in different directions in ways that we never would have expected.
I think most people have heard of numerology, but I think very few people really understand what it is and its validity as a tool for spiritual insight. So let's start there. Just give us the story of numerology. I know it must be an ancient science. And, help us appreciate more about numerology, Larry.
Okay. Well, as probably most people know, numerology is called the science of numbers. It looks at the numbers associated with each letter in our names. All of our names are important in numerology, the one at birth being the most important. But when we change our names throughout life, a woman gets married, for example, and takes on a new name, or maybe she doesn't. Maybe someone's born a William and uses the name Bill commonly. Those are all name changes that can be significant, and a numerologist will tend to look at all of those different names that we have. And then there's a date of birth, and the numbers there are obvious. And a numerologist will look at those letters in the name, which get converted to numbers, according to the system I work with is called a Pythagorean system, which is Pythagoras, the ancient Greek mathematician, astronomer, musician, philosopher. He's considered the father of modern numerology, and he lived about 500 BC, approximately between 5 and 600 BC. And he's considered the father of modern numerology, and most people may remember him from math classes in high school. He gave us the right triangle theorem, where if you have a right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the square of the sides. That's one of those foundational trigonometry type or geometry type formulas that he developed, and he's known for that. And he was also a metaphysician, and so he had a group of people, his disciples, that he taught numerology to. And back in his day and age, he considered numerology very powerful, and he didn't want it to be misused. And so he instructed his disciples to never share anything about numerology with anyone else, just to use it the way he was instructing it. And I sort of believe, although I don't have any proof to this, but I sort of have a belief that he probably took numerology further than we have taken it, in the 21st century. But much of what we do is based on what he taught, because after he passed away, some of his disciples did share some of what he did and what it worked. And it sort of went to sleep for a long time until the early 1900s. And then there were some women who sort of resurrected numerology and started at the beginning of the 1900s. There was Julia Seton, Florence Campbell, some of the forerunners of the early resurrection of numerology in the very early 1900s. And then more and more people got involved in it. Matthew Goodwin, my business partner at the time when we did the numerology, all took numerology to a whole new level in terms of their research and their studying. And so it expanded into where it is today. But I still believe the Pythagoras probably knew more about numerology than we do today and use it in the most interesting ways. But getting back to what numerology is, that's a little bit about the history of it. But getting back to what numerology is and how can it actually help us, it's sort of a way to look at the soul-level blueprint of what this life is about. Numerology works very closely with karma and reincarnation. When someone asks me what is numerology, it's very hard for me to talk about numerology without talking about past lives and the mistakes that we've made or the good things we've done in past lives and the karma that's created and the lessons that we're learning in each of the lifetimes that we're here. And so the soul chooses the environment that it wants to come into, at least the way I see numerology. And it chooses the family, the country, the circumstances, the timing of which age and era it wants to come back into, because it knows it needs to learn specific lessons on its journey back to the divine, and which is the ultimate purpose of life. And numerology shows us for this particular lifetime, it's like the instruction manual that we never got. You know, if you buy a toaster oven, you get an instruction manual. You buy a TV, you get an instruction manual how to use it. We're born, but we don't have any instruction manual of how to operate our life. So we just sort of go by the opportunities that life throws at us. We sort of have an inherent built-in soul nature that pushes us in certain directions. Certain opportunities and experiences just happen. Some of them are in our control, some of them are not in our control. And there's this big divine plan at work that's always pushing us in a direction to ultimately go back to the divine, whether we are aware of it or not, whether we're on a spiritual journey or not. That's the highest purpose of life. But numerology can give us some insights into this particular lifetime and the important lessons that we need to learn this particular lifetime. And so by understanding those lessons and working with the vibrations and the energies as indicated by the numbers in our chart, once a numerologist works those out, then you have a guide as to, oh, this is what my purpose is this lifetime. This is where the most important lesson is supposed to be learning. And I've found from experience that probably 80%, or maybe higher, tend to resonate with their life purpose, which in numerology would be called the life path. It's the most important lesson that we are here to learn at the soul level, but in our temporary human form that we're in. And people that have ignored their life path, from my observations, tend to have a more difficult time in life. Things tend to go bad. They have more obstacles, more challenges, because they're fighting their soul's purpose for being here. And those that I find more aligned with their life path, their soul's purpose, doesn't mean life goes easy or totally smoothly, because we're learning lots of different lessons over a variety of issues that we're trying to master in a particular lifetime. But I find that things tend to go better for them. They tend to be a little bit more happy, a little bit more joyful, because they're moving in the way their soul wants them to be. And from my perspective, from my spiritual orientation and background, the soul really is the wise one that's trying to guide us. The ego really just gets us in a lot of trouble. It thinks it knows everything and it wants to be the boss. And it sort of shuts out us listening to our soul's inner voice. That either can be our intuition that it tries to talk to us through, or our gut feelings that it talks through. Sometimes it's through synchronicities that it sets up in our life, that it arranges for us, that we, resist or ignore instead of flowing with. And so it's trying to get more in tune with our soul, and the numerology chart that can be worked up for us as an individual, which might consist of over 1,000 numbers, if you look at the full chart that our professional numerologist might work up. You look at all those numbers, and they all have different meanings. And when you look at each of those numbers, every number sort of represents an energy or vibration that we're working with. In fact, everything in the universe vibrates at its own particular frequency. And by finding the vibrational rate of any object, you can know its qualities and energies associated with it. So by using numerology, what we're doing is we're determining our own major frequencies, the frequencies that apply to us as an individual. And by calculating or looking at all those numbers based on our names and date of birth, we're able to find out a tremendous amount of information about one's personality, their character, their strengths, their weaknesses, their inner motivations, the areas that they're blocked in, where they may have difficulties. We can use numerology to learn about those that are close to us in our life. If you're in an intimate relationship and you do numerology readings or reports for each other and you get to know each other better at a deeper level, then it becomes very helpful as a tool. And the universe in its infinite wisdom has given us many, many tools. But numerology is one that I've been drawn to, and it's one I particularly like because it's when you try to explain how numerology works, you can't really do it based on anything physical. You really have to go down and look at the spiritual nature of life and existence to get some deeper understanding of numerology. And I think that's what personally appeals to me about numerology. Numerology also, besides talking about a personality, can also talk about the energies and influences that we're going to have to deal with during a particular period of time. And there's a thing called a personal year that tells us what influences are going to be taking place during a particular year, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year on a calendar basis. And by knowing the energy that we're dealing with in any particular time frame, instead of fighting and resisting and trying to go off in a different direction and running into a lot of obstacles, if we flow with that energy, because we understand its significance for this time period, we find that things go more smoothly. We find better opportunities come arise. We find less frustration in our lives, less beating our head against the wall because things aren't going the way we wanted it. Or sometimes in numerology it may say, well, this may be a period of time where things are not going to move very forward very quickly, and here's what you should do about it. And by knowing that, you don't try to force something that's not right to happen, causing more blockages to arise. So to me, that's the real value of numerology, is that it's a guide for us that helps us move forward in a way that's aligned with our soul's reason for being here this lifetime, to the degree that we're receptive, to the degree that we're willing, which means sometimes trusting our intuition and not listening to the ego so much. So I hope that makes some sense to you and to your audience.
Well, it's really interesting. One of the most interesting concepts that you shared for me is that each number has a frequency or an energy associated with it. I mean, that's a concept that is very strange in our culture. For most people, if you were to say, your birth date is not just a certain month and day and certain year, it actually is an energy pattern that reflects your soul and your soul's journey in this lifetime, which is so deep and so profound, and that the name you were given is not a random name, or the name that you're using, or the name that is most current for you is not a random event. That name embodies certain energies and frequencies. And maybe you can explain this in a little more depth, Larry, for people who don't know anything about numerology, how letters become numbers. And how, so when you're doing a chart or a reading, you give a name, many people are saying, well, how does that become related to numerology?
What happens is that you have 26 letters in the English alphabet. So I'm going to talk about the English alphabet. And there are a lot of other alphabets based off the English alphabet that have less letters. And there's some alphabets that are based on a totally different system, like Chinese or Hindu or the Arabic languages and other languages. So I'm going to talk mainly about languages that use the English alphabet. And then we can talk about for a moment how somebody who was born in a foreign country, how would they deal with that if their name is, using a totally different system in terms of the alphabet. But basically, I work with the Pythagorean system. So in the Pythagorean system, it's sort of it's a linear system in that you start with the letter A and it's a 1. You assign the number 1 to it. The letter B is a 2. The letter 3 is a C, and so forth, until you get up to the letter I, which in sequence would then be a 9. And then you start again with the next letter after I, which would be J, which is now a 1 again. So you repeat 1 through 9, R being 9 again. And then you get to an S where it starts again, and that would be a 1. And then the last letter of the alphabet is Z, and that would be an 8. So you've got 9, 9, and 8. That should add up to 26 letters, if I did that right. And so every letter corresponds to a number. And what you do is you write the name out, and you put these numbers below. You put numbers down for every letter below it, and then you separate it out between looking at the numbers that correspond to the vowels, the numbers that correspond to the consonants. So those give you the numbers off the name that are most important. And then you add them up in a special kind of way. It's sort of like a modulo 9 math, where you add and reduce everything so that it always ends up as a single-digit number. And usually the last 2 digits before you get to the final single-digit number, some of those numbers also have other significance called master numbers, like 11 and 22, or karmic debts, like a 19-1 or a 13-4 or 16-7 or 14-5 are considered karmic debts. And those tend to indicate that we've misused these energies in past lifetimes, and so the energy is more out of balance in this lifetime, and it's going to take us more work and effort and more learning to bring those energies back into a more balanced way, which is really the goal. When we look at any particular number, there's 9 core numbers, 1 through 9, the 2 master numbers, and the 4 karmic debts add a little bit more meaning to some of the single-digit numbers. Every single number corresponds to a spectrum of possibilities in terms of the energy. And so at one end of the spectrum, we could be totally ignoring the energy. At the other end of the spectrum, we're overutilizing the energy. And the purpose in the study of numerology is to help us understand what the spectrum looks like, where we're manifesting those numbers in our particular chart, so that we can say, am I using it, am I ignoring this energy altogether, which means I don't relate to what the description of that energy is about, or am I overutilizing it, which means, oh God, maybe I'm using it too strongly and I'm actually not doing this in a way that's beneficial to my optimum growth, and I'm causing obstacles and more problems for myself because I'm overutilizing that energy too strongly. And I'll give you examples in a moment. And then using it in a balanced way. Oh, so this is what the energy looks like in a balanced way. Oh, so that's the goal. And no matter whether the energies in a chart look like they're out of balance or in balance, we're all learning to struggle. At one time or another, we could all be underutilizing or overutilizing energy. We're all working to use that energy in a balanced way. And so the real value of numerology is to learn what that energy looks like for each number that's relevant in our chart. Some of those numbers are going to correspond to what our life purpose is. Some of those numbers are going to correspond to the natural talents and abilities we came in with that we know how to do, where the life purpose is something we're learning. So we don't naturally know how to do it, but it's where we're going to find the greatest success, inner peace and harmony, is from learning to do that. And there's other numbers that might relate to what our heart's desire is. What do we really want in life? And if that energy is in alignment with the life path and our natural talents and abilities, then that's really good because we'll find our life goes more smoothly. But if it's in conflict because the energies are very different, which often can be the case, we find we have more conflict in our life and it causes us more confusion. And by understanding how all these different, sometimes contradictory energies in our chart work together, it gives us a way to understand sometimes the things that confuse us. Why do I sometimes feel this way, but I feel drawn towards this way? I do this easily, and this seems so difficult, but I'm drawn to wanting to do this. It sort of all of a sudden makes sense at a very deep level of how all these interconnected numbers and energies are being stirred up to make the recipe of who we are. It's sort of like, God created us this lifetime, or our karma created us this lifetime by the divine laws that God created. And so we have this, let's say somebody threw together a dish full of lots of interesting different kinds of tastes. And we have to make all those tastes work together because we're now the chef in charge of our life, trying to bring everything together again here. And so we work to make sense of all these numbers and find a way to work with all these different energies in a harmonious way. And that's the value of the numerology. It shows us how to work with all these different diverse energies that sometimes seem incredibly contradictory and troublesome to us. We learn how to work with them in a harmonious way and how to work with both different energies, even though they're very different and contradictory. I mean, that's the real value, I think, of working with a numerologist.
I find tools like numerology and astrology. I've had my chart done many times, and by different people, but it's always a useful tool, and depending on the quality of the astrologer or numerologist, it can be a tool or an avenue into who you are, into your soul, that helps you make sense of what's going on at any time in your life. And I have used astrology, which is a tool similar to numerology. I have used astrology, however, as a tool when I was going through really rough periods of my life. And when we're going through really difficult periods of life for whatever reason, whether it's loss of job or relationships or death or whatever. We feel like we live in a period of chaos. That doesn't make sense. But if you had a tool like numerology to help put into perspective this cycle you are in your life and the greater purpose, you can navigate more gracefully through those times, and you see the cycles and you know that this cycle will move into another cycle, and be able to work more consciously and responsibly to grow appropriately as that experience is really demanding us to do into the next stage of our life, if that makes sense to you. So these are tools that are so important, because when I did have those readings during those turbulent times, it gave me a perspective that made it much easier to accept what was going on and to work with that period of time so I could be prepared for what was to come. And there was always something that was to come that would open up new horizons. So that's so profound for me, because you said in the very beginning of our conversation that we really don't have tools and roadmaps in our culture. And this wasn't always the case. Ancient cultures, whether it's Egyptians or Greeks or the many, many other ancient cultures that have existed, all used these tools in one form or another to help guide people in their lifetime. They gave them a sense of direction, more insight into their soul's journey. And our culture has really lost the understanding that we do have a purpose in life, and that we do have a way that we can serve and be able to have a much more fulfilling, satisfying life experience. And we need to know, if we're not on that path, what that path is and how to begin to move to get onto it. So that's why I love all these tools. I resonate with them. I think they're incredibly powerful resources to give to let our mind, or that ego part of us, align with our soul. It's like, there's a reason. There is a reason. There's a greater purpose for all that's going on. So I have a question for you. What does your chart say about you that allowed you to become, a numerologist and working on this path in your lifetime?
Well, let me share a few examples of ways that numerology has actually helped me once I understood it and started using it in a constructive way. As many people go through in life, we don't always have the self-confidence that we need to go in a particular path, particularly if it's a little bit different than what we think we're supposed to be doing. And when you look at the numerology, you get to realize what your natural strengths are. This is true of me, and it's also true of a lot of people that counsel with numerology. So it's sort of something that's probably generic to many of us, or appropriate for many of us. When we have a talent or an ability, often we don't have the self-confidence to actually pursue it. There's a part of us that's doubting. And when we look at the numerology and it says this is a strength that you have, you should be using this energy in a constructive way, it helps you to more appreciate those strengths that you have. And maybe when the right circumstances occur in your life that want to push you in that direction where you would use those kinds of talents and abilities, where you might have otherwise been unlikely to want to go forward in that direction because maybe the confidence level wasn't there, oh, I can't really do this. It would give you the energy or the confidence and the strength to go forward so that you might actually take it on and do something with that in a way that's beneficial to you. And I found that to be the case in my life. I have a 3-life path, and a 3-life path is about, you would think, when you understand what the 3-life path is, oh, that's an easy life path. I wish I had that one. And I find that no matter what your life path is, for you, it's a challenge, even though for someone else it might be a piece of cake. In the case of the 3, it's about learning the creative expression, the joyful expression of life. And I was anything but that when I was younger. I was very reserved. I was very withdrawn. I wasn't terribly sociable. And I had a hard time getting out of my own shell. And this is funny. This is how the universe throws opportunities in front of you in strange ways when it wants to move you in a certain direction. I belonged to this group that I went to probably once every couple of weeks or once a month. And it was a neat group. I really liked it. It was called the Master Game. It was about learning to master yourself. And it was a nice group of people, and I really enjoyed being part of the group. And one of the ladies there approached me and gave me this flyer and said, "I think this would be good for you. I would encourage you to go." It was a flyer on an improv class. And I said, "Improv class? What is this?" I said, "Gee," I sort of was discounting it right away. But something within me said, give it a try. What do you got to lose? So I went ahead and I called up the instructor, and it was the last class they were having of the series of what would you call them, meetings that they had for what would be like an 8-week class or something like that. So this is like the 8th class. And he invited me to come just to sit there and just watch, just to see what it was like, because he was going to have another class after that. And if it interested me, I could go ahead and take it. So I went to the class, and I'm watching these people do improv. And you may have seen improv on television or been to an improv thing. And you're sort of making things ad lib and doing it in a way where you're working with all your other partners that you're working with doing the improv. And you're getting, a little silly, goofy, crazy, all these crazy things are happening. And you're getting outside of yourself, and you're really having to count on just things flowing up naturally. You can't use your ego too much when you're doing improv. It just has to flow out of you in a creative kind of expression, sort of like the soul creative expression. So I'm sitting in this class, and I'm saying, oh, my God, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't belong here. And I said, when there's a break, I got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here. So it was probably an hour and 15 minutes by the time the break shows up. And I'm looking at the break. I said, some voice in me says, no, don't go. Stay. I said, what do you mean stay? So I ended up staying. So I stayed to the end, and I got to the end of this class, and I said, okay, interesting. And I ended up signing up for the next class that he had, and I loved improv. I was so good at it. I just loved it, and it opened up a self-expression with me that I had never experienced ever before. And finally, my 3 energy, which is my life lesson, so I didn't know how to do it, I had to learn how to do it, was finally starting to come out. That's sort of how the universe works. It moves us in crazy directions like that to awaken those soul qualities within us that are asleep. So that's one very important way that numerology has helped me. It's helped me in another very important way about understanding my wife. We've been married for a lot of years, and we've been through a lot together. And when you're early on in a marriage, if you're like most people, you don't really know how to love yet. You hear word love a lot, but learning what love really means is like, oh my God, it's nothing like what we thought it was. That's not love at all, the way Hollywood presents it, the way most people think of love. My relationship, I love him, I love him, I love him. Usually it's a very needy, selfish feeling that most of us have when we think we're in love and we need to have somebody. That's what love looks like. When you start the spiritual journey and you start to awaken a little bit, you start to realize that love is so deeper, so much more than that. Well, early on in my marriage, my wife was so different from me, I'm so different from her. I was always trying to change her, and I'm sure I'm not the only person on the planet that's probably done that with the change Hispanic.
I'm sure you're not.
Well, I kept trying to change her, and because we were so different, I have to tell you it did not go so well. It just caused a lot of friction. So that was right before I got into numerology. And then I got into numerology, and so I looked at her report. I did a workup of her and read her report, and looked at my report and said, we're quite different. And it finally dawned on me for the first time that that's who she was at a soul level. That's who she had to be. I was a little bit on a soul journey at that point, so very early on, very immature, but cranking away, trying to move forward in some kind of positive way. And I realized she needed to be this way. and I was doing a very big disservice by trying to change her to be like me because it would make my life easier. It wasn't going to make her life any better. It would have actually derailed her if she was to have done that, if she was to become more like me, because that's not who she was supposed to be and the lesson she needs to learn this lifetime. And once I put two and two together and made that realization, our relationship started to gradually, over a period of time, to blossom and unfold because I stopped being a pain in her butt, trying to change her all the time. And so that to me was probably an incredibly important benefit that I received from the insights in numerology. So those are probably the two most worthwhile ones to share with you.
Well, that's so profound what you just said, because numerology is a tool that can be useful for relationships, right? And helping people to do just what you learned, is to appreciate and understand the other and their journey and who they are, and be able to just appreciate them rather than make them into something other than what they are, or make them into what we want them to be, which will never work, ever. So
never.
To be able to get to that place where you can honor and appreciate that other being for who they are and how they are going to best fulfill their life purpose in this lifetime in their unique way, which is, we're like universes apart. We're all universes apart. It's about being able to understand and appreciate the universe that's the other, right? Because you can't bend them into your will anyway. It's impossible. That's not the purpose, first of all, but it's impossible to do that. And so to create more appreciation and harmony in relationships, or I would think it's critically important for children, for your children to understand, to do charts on your children so you can really see who these souls are and how best to support them in unfolding so they can fulfill their greatest expression in this lifetime. And that would be very profound. You must do that for people, help them with their children too.
I encourage them very much so. What you said is a very, very important aspect of numerology. You have a child, and when you look at their numerology, you can see their natural strengths. You can also see the areas that are going to hold them back in life. You can see both sides of them, the positive sides and their negative sides, their imbalanced sides and their out-of-balance sides. As a parent, what an incredible guidance the numerology can give you, because if you see that they don't have the self-confidence to manifest their true natural talents and abilities, you go and encourage them to start using those natural talents and abilities early on in life. They blossom so much sooner. And when you see them misusing their energies, the things that are out of balance, you know where that's coming from too, and you know that's a deep soul lesson, and they need to learn to overcome that. And in a very loving, compassionate way, you try to guide them to be different, to let go of those qualities, to see the mistakes of not to use that, what kind of trouble it's going to cause them if they continue to act that way. So what you share there with using this with parents with their children is so, so important, and I'm glad you brought that out because it's so significant. I did want to go back and say something more about relationships. As you were talking,
yeah, please do. We can never say enough about relationships, Larry.
Relationships are such an area that gives people so much trouble, and I don't think people really understand the true purpose of relationships. And this is something both through my journey with numerology and journey with spirituality that I've come to these realizations in terms of romantic, intimate relationships. The highest purpose of a relationship is not necessarily to have a family, although that's a very important purpose because we do need to keep the human race going so more souls can come back and learn lessons. But the highest purpose is not that. It's not to fulfill our own personal needs, which often people go into relationships for because they're needy in a certain area and they look for the other person to compensate for that. The highest purpose of a relationship is a spiritual aspect of a relationship. It's to awaken our soul nature. That is the highest purpose of the relationship. And our partner is the instrument through which that can happen. To anyone who knows anything about spirituality, they know a lot of people will seek out a spiritual path. They'll seek out a teacher. And they may seek out a guru or some other realized being or some very highly evolved being and follow that path. And what does that guru or master do? They're there to help the disciple or the student, depending on what degree that they're involved with the teacher, to overcome their ego nature and to allow in their soul nature. That's the whole purpose of the spiritual journey, is to overcome the ego's hold on the soul, allow the soul to awaken so it can fully blossom as a divine being that it already is, but forgot that it is. And in the false identification of the soul with the ego, it gets lost on its journey and needs to struggle back, and it makes mistakes because of that false identification, and that's the karma we create, that the numerology can show what some of that karma is that we're working on and have to work through. So what happens is, how does our partner act as that, as a role in helping us do that? Well, just like those people who are on a spiritual journey that may have accepted a guru or a master, they actually, if they're in a marriage or an intimate relationship, they actually have a second guru in their life. But they don't realize it. And for all of those who are not on a spiritual journey at all, but have a spouse or an intimate partner, they have a guru in their life that they don't really understand and are aware of. Because the whole purpose of the guru is to help us look in the mirror and see ourselves the way we honestly, truly are, so that we can change ourselves. Well, I don't know any faster, more difficult way than to be in a close, intimate relationship with a partner and working through your stuff so that the relationship can grow and blossom. And the only way a relationship grows and blossoms is not by trying to change the other person. It's by accepting them who they are, with all their strengths and weaknesses, with all the things that aggravate you about them, with all the things you love about them, accepting them exactly that way and realizing that's who they are as a soul this lifetime. This is what they're learning. And when you become reactive in the relationship, oh, that person made me so angry, I want to get out of this relationship, I want to divorce them, you're running away from your greatest opportunity in life, which is to change yourself. Because whatever you become reactive to, particularly in any kind of close relationship where it's going to happen the most often and the deepest, those are the opportunities that we have to see ourselves in the mirror and to say, oh, I'm reacting off of this. I've got those same seeds that I dislike in this person within myself, or I wouldn't be reacting to that person. Because when you see someone do something really goofy or silly or stupid and you don't react to them, that's not an issue for you. You don't have those seeds within you. But when you react over someone, whether it be a coworker, a friend, a family member, your spouse, your children, whatever you react off of, that's where your work lies to grow on a spiritual path. That's where you look in the mirror of self-introspection and say, oh, how do I have that characteristic in me? How can I change that within me? Most people in relationships rather get divorced and run away from each other or separate than face themselves. They want the other person to change, which never works, and that's not the whole purpose of the relationship. The highest purpose of the relationship that God gave us is so that we could spiritually awaken and grow. That's, to me, the most important aspect of relationship. Now, all the other purposes of a relationship are important, and they bring us human comfort, and we can raise a family with children, and we learn more lessons being parents with the interactions we have with our kids. So it's all part of what our karmic plan is for this lifetime. But I think that's the one aspect of relationships that numerology and the spiritual journey has made me very aware that most people are blind to. And so I just felt that very important to share that with you and your audience.
No, thanks. That's really valuable because, like so many areas of our life, we get into things, situations and relationships, jobs, and we come up against obstacles. There's something going on in that environment that's painful for us. And because we don't have a roadmap and we don't know what the greater purpose is for why we have put ourselves into this situation, we always make the other wrong or, try to escape from a situation without investigating the greater purpose, and that's the responsibility of a mature being, is to really understand and gain wisdom from the experiences. And it's not easy, trust me. We've all been there.
Oh, it is
not easy, but it's the path of a wise being, someone who's really choosing to take responsibility for their lives and to reconnect to who they are. So So let's talk a little bit in the time we have left about the program that you created to generate these numerology reports for people. I know you've invested a lot of time, energy, probably a lot of money into creating a program that is highly recognized. I mean, it's recognized by the Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE. That's the Edgar Cayce Foundation, which is highly respectable, right? That is the Edgar Cayce Association.
That's correct.
Correct in saying that? Yeah,
yes.
Which is, for people who haven't heard about that organization, it's quite a reputable organization investigating the spiritual and healing side of life. And then all these other websites have endorsed the program that you've been developing, I gather, for many years. So we have about 5 minutes left in our time today. So I'm going to let you talk about what you've created and also how it's a program that people can take advantage of. If people are curious about numerology and how numerology can be a tool in their life or to help them with certain challenges or issues that are going on or cycles of their life, you've created this program and the reports that help. So tell us a little bit about this.
Well, we've been offering numerology software reports since about 1985, so we've been doing this for a very long time. The ARE, which is one of the first organizations that we actually did business with, and they did a really significant research project using the reports from our software. Back in those days, it was long before the Internet, and we had to hand print out these reports, and we mailed the reports back to them. And they included the reports with a 20-page questionnaire. It was a research questionnaire. They wanted to find out the validity of numerology. And they had about, I think it was, they got about 6,000 people, their initial reports that they got that they sent along with these research questionnaires, and they got 1,000 back out of those first 6,000. And they did a statistical study on this 20-page questionnaire, which I don't know if I would have filled out, but the ARE members were very loyal and very dedicated to have filled out that extensive of a questionnaire for this research. And they came back and found numerology was highly accurate. And I won't go through all the details, but there's an article on one of our websites, wideninghorizons.com, where we sell the software, about the results of that article. But that was where we got started, was with the Association for Research and Enlightenment. We're not working with them today, but we did back then, and that launched us. But we developed, we sold probably over 1 million reports over all the time we've been in business through all the different vehicles and the partners that we've worked with. So we've been doing this for a long time, and I'm getting tremendous feedback from most people. The Know Your Personality Profile is our flagship report, and it's designed for those both with a knowledge of numerology and those with no knowledge of numerology. So you don't have to be a numerologist. It's what I call a modern version of a numerology report versus a traditional version. It's geared towards people of any audience in terms of what their background relative to numerology. It doesn't show the numbers in it, but it does read more easily, and it's more relevant to somebody who just wants to learn about themselves. And we have a whole family of reports. We actually have 4 different reports. And I believe you're putting up a link to our website, Cheryl, for getting access to
Oh,
reports.
Definitely. Yes.
And we're offering a 25% discount for anybody that goes through that link that you're putting up there on any of the, for the Know Your Personality Profile. I take it back. We're offering a 25% discount on that one. But the other reports are also available at checkout time if they're of interest to them. And it's something I really encourage people to get for themselves as well as their family, their spouse, their children, anyone they're really close to. If you're working with someone, if you can get their data that you need, which is the birth, you need that full name at birth, given at birth, that full name they most commonly use and identify with today, and the date of birth is the information you need. Those reports can be really, really helpful. So that's a resource. And is there enough time? I wanted to share some other books, too, that could be good resources. Do you have time to talk about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
For
we have about a minute.
Okay, then I'll keep it real short. There's 3 books I wanted to share on different topics that might be of interest to the listeners. If you're totally new to numerology but it interests you and you'd like to learn more about it, a good beginning book is called The Complete Idiot's Guide to Numerology. All of these books are available on Amazon.com that I'm going to mention. If you're already heavily into numerology and you would like to go much deeper, Matthew Oliver Goodwin, my partner that we worked with in developing all the software and all the reports, including the Know You profiles that we talked about and the Know You Personality profile as one of those 4, is the author of Numerology, The Complete Guide. It's a Volume 1 and Volume 2, and it is probably the most comprehensive, most incredible book on numerology that I've ever read, but it's more of an intermediate to advanced book, so for those that are into numerology, where the Complete Idiot's Guide to Numerology would be better for someone who's totally brand new. And for anyone who would like to pursue the spiritual journey or at least open themselves up to it, I'd recommend the Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. It's available in hardcover, paperback. It's actually available on the Kindle for 99 cents. It's available on CD as an audio and as an audio book also. They're all available from Amazon.com. And that book is so full of love. It's written by someone who's God realized. And the book is so touched and so filled with love. It's considered a spiritual classic that whether or not you follow any spiritual path, it will touch your heart in a way that very few books will. And so those are some resources that I sort of recommend.
Gosh, I read Autobiography of a Yogi maybe 50 years ago. Not that long ago, but it seems like that. Yeah. So listen, for people who are curious about numerology and want to learn more about what Larry is doing, first of all, his website is Know You Profiles, and I'm going to spell that because it's KNO, Know You, letter U, profiles.com. So that's Know You Profiles, KNOU, profiles.com. Or you can go to wideninghorizons.com. And yes, Gary did mention that he is very generous in offering a personality profile from his software program for a 25% discount. To get the link that gets you to that 25% discount, you will need to either go over to my Facebook page and like me there, because you have to actually access it through the archive information of the show, since it's a long URL. So, or you can go over to Dr. Cheryl Selman and just opt in there, and I will send you the archived show with that link. So that's what you need to do to get the link, to get the 25% off discount. Personally, I think everyone should invest. It's a really nominal fee to learn more about themselves, because the more you learn about yourselves, the better your life becomes. And isn't that what it's all about? So you can't have a more experienced numerologist to help you on your way than Larry Malakoff, who's been my guest today. And thank you so much, Larry, for all the great insight you've provided for us about numerology and great insights about the spiritual journey as well. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Cheryl, it was my honor, and thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And for all of you listening, thank you for joining me today on the show. And, our show is all about discovering your true purpose through the spiritual numerology path. And it's a very profound path. So give it a go. Take up Larry's offer. Why not? It's an opportunity to grow, to know yourself, to make your life all that you've always wanted it to be. So I just want to say, until next time, I hope your week is filled with love, peace, and harmony. Bye for now.